Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, I'm going to be showcasing a powerful climbing team that you can use for this new Open Great League meta. This team features two Pokemon that received move updates this season, Kingdra on the lead with its new move of Surf, and Seismitoad as the save switch with its new move of Icy Wind and its buffed move of Earth Power, and Seismitoad is the save switch. As the closer, we're using an old classic Tinkaton with the Calm Day move Gigaton Hammer. I ran this team on my wife's account for 4 sets and ended up going 18-2, so a 90% win rate. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and we get a very nice lead in game number 1, leading Kingdra into Shadow Kingdra. Now, describing a perfect mirror as a very nice lead might seem a bit odd, but this is a high attack Kingdra, so it's almost always going to be winning charge attack priority in the mirror, meaning that I'm always going to be able to dictate the pace of the game. My opponent commits the first shield, I'm more than happy to shield back, and now my opponent's forced to either lose the energy, go down a shield, or they're forced to catch out and give up switch advantage. They catch the Swift onto Tinkaton, but I have a very strong answer for Tinkaton, as in comes the newest bud boy in the Great League, Seismitoad. Seismitoad now gets cheaper access to Earth Power this season and access to Icy Wind every 10 turns. Seismitoad already has pretty okay bulk, so the fact that it's able to spam out Icy Winds that quickly is very, very scary. I double up on Earth Powers, take the knockout, in comes Kingdra, but I have a high attack Seismitoad, so I actually win charge attack priority. Icy Wind pressures away the final shield, and now I'm just going to trust in the fact that Tinkaton in the 1-0s is almost always going to be winning. I send in Tinkaton, in comes Licky Licky, opponent sees the writing on the wall, and concedes the match. Tough lead in the next match, as Mantine is a pretty big core breaker for this team. Mantine's very strong into Kingdra, it's very strong into Seismitoad, but getting a catch and sneak of a Twister on a Tinkaton is a really good place to start. That is a triple resistant catch, but unfortunately my happiness is short-lived, as out comes Galarian Stunfisk. Honestly, when I think of Pokemon that got buffed with Earthquake, Galarian Stunfisk wasn't really a Pokemon that crossed my mind, but I guess it did get buffed with Earthquake, and I'm in quite a bit of trouble in this matchup. I can never really flip it, but what I can do is look to bank a massive amount of energy and then pivot in Seismitoad as they fire off Earthquake number 2. Seismitoad will be able to tank this a lot better than the Tinkaton, but it's still going to hurt. My opponent sends in Mantine. Mantine can probably go for the full wing attack farm down, but Seismitoad will be able to apply debuff after debuff. This means that my opponents can exit with a ton of energy, but the energy is really not going to be doing anything when it's double debuffed, and I believe Tinkaton can win charge attack priority over the Mantine. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm going to bring in Tinkaton, hope for the best, and I do win charge attack priority. Mantine's Water Pulse already doesn't do a lot of damage, so when you added the fact that it's double debuffed by the 2 Icy Winds from Seismitoad, and this is basically going to be healing Tinkaton. My opponent pivots out, they have a Shadow Sableye in the back, and this is what it all comes down to. The Bulldoze bait. Will they respect it? Yes, they do! I get the debuff, but the debuff realistically doesn't matter. I needed to bait to ensure that I could survive the Shadow Claws to make it to the Gigaton Hammer. My Tinkaton's very low, but I'm able to hang on. Gigaton Hammer is reached, and this is going to be picking up the one-hit KO. Back in comes Stunfisk, I pivot into the Kingdra, and I'm looking to overfarm as much as possible. I fire off Surf right before they reach the Earthquake, hoping this is enough. Kingdra KOs the Stunfisk, and that should be a win. Back in comes Mantine, even despite the nightmare alignment, it just simply did not matter. This team is too good. Mantine goes for the Twister, Kingdra shrugs it off, Kingdra farms down, and that's a good game. We get the Dream lead in game number 3, leading Kingdra into Typhlosion. And the Typhlosion is not pivoting out, much to my surprise. Typhlosion gets absolutely shredded by Kingdra, so there's not really a reason to stay in, unless there's something in the back that also does not want to see Kingdra. I'm still going to fire off the Surf here, as I think they might barely survive the Swift, and I don't want to lose the Zeros. Surf will be shielded, they overfarm, and that lets me reach the Swift. Now, I can definitely knock out with the Swift. They're forced to double shield, they overfarm even more, and I'm able to get the CMP tie. They have back-to-back Thunder Punches, but by shielding, I can just knock them out with the Swift. The second Thunder Punch will be lost, and not only have I won Switch advantage, I've won Shield advantage as well. So at this point, this game should basically be over. My opponent sends in Serperior. What is the Serperior doing here? Grass types are not really a thing, and they haven't been for a few seasons. As I jokingly said in the Kanto Ninetales video, our new grass type in the meta is a fire type, and it's Kanto Ninetales with Energy Ball. My opponent has a Bastiodon in the back. Oh, traitor. Bastiodon hasn't been good in seasons. In comes Seismitoad, and there's just nothing that Bastiodon can do. Bastiodon fires off the Stone Edge. Seismitoad just does not care. Going for the Earth Power, and this is double super effective. Earth Power connects, Basti gets KO'd, in comes Serperior, but this is a Mud Boy that can fight back into the grasses. Icy Wind KOs Serperior, and this team just keeps finding a way to win. We see a familiar lead in the next match, sending Kingdra into Shadow Kingdra. I feel like a lot of my opponents were using the Shadow Kingdra. I'm definitely not opposed to running the Shadow. I did decide that I wanted just a little bit of extra bulk, because Seismitoad does end up being a pretty shield-hungry Pokemon. This time my opponent ends up no shielding, and I have a pretty cool idea. I'm going to throw some Dragon Breaths, switch in Seismitoad, sniped out with a Mud Shot, but they live on 1 HP. If I did one more Dragon Breath, then I could have got that snipe, but unfortunately, my opponent is actually able to get some critical damage onto the Seismitoad, and then they send in Licky Licky. I remember a few games ago that I played against Shadow Kingdra, Licky Licky, and Tinkaton, and if this is that same team, then I probably need to preserve the Seismitoad. So I Icy Wind to debuff them, shield up the Shadow Ball, and then I'll fire off the Earth Power. This won't KO, but it's going to put Licky Licky very, very low. And as they look to fire off the Shadow Ball, we're going to catch onto the Kingdra, and just like that, even though we kind of messed up trying to go for that snipe with Mud Shots, we redeem ourselves with that catch. I'm going to wait down the timer. When it hits 0, in comes Tinkaton, and I'm looking for the Fairy Wind down. Licky Licky unfortunately has other ideas. Licky Licky barely able to hang on and leave with a parting gift of a debuff Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball connects, really not going to do a whole lot of damage, and it is the team. It's Tinkaton in the back. I fire off Bulldoze, 50-50 chance at a debuff. Opponent lets it go, and I do get the debuff. They pivot out, they reset the debuff, so the defense is back to normal, but now I can go for Icy Wind baits. The Icy Wind is shielded up by the Tinkaton, and they're in so much trouble. At this point, because I've lowered their attack, I should be outside of Gigaton range on my Tinkaton. So, I can just full send the Earth Power, and once I get the shield, switch back into my Tinkaton and go for Gigaton Hammer. My opponent knows it, they realize their only win con is to try and call the Icy Wind. Earth Power takes the knockout, and we get the win. We've got some cool spice from my opponent in the next match as I lead Kingdra into Melmetal. Melmetal is a Pokemon that I'm very excited to try, especially in the Ultra League. Melmetal got access to Dynamic Punch, which is a massive upgrade over its old fighting move, which was Superpower. Superpower debuffed your attack and defense. Dynamic Punch, you don't have to debuff anything. You can just stay on the field and inflict massive damage. Melmetal's gonna win the lead here, and they exit with enough HP that I can't even farm down with Seismitoad before they make a third Dynamic Punch. So my opponent's getting massive value out of this Pokemon. At the very least, I get a huge energy head start on Seismitoad. My opponent does not want to concede the farm down, and they pivot into Starmie. Starmie is very glassy. I decide to go for a risky bait. Icy Wind gets the shield. I go for the Earth Power, but my opponent is going to CMP tie with the -1 Aqua Jet. Aqua Jet is going to land. Seismitoad takes it pretty well due to the Icy Wind debuff, and now I can land the Earth Power. Earth Power will hit for big damage. I pivot into Tinkaton, looking for the farm down, but Starmie, it's glassy, but it's just not glassy enough. Hangs on with 1 HP, and leaves with a parting gift of the Aqua Jet. I just have to not let my opponent catch onto their 1 HP Melmetal. They send in Kingdra as their final Pokemon. Gigaton is resisted, but it's just such a stupid move. Gigaton puts so much damage onto that Kingdra. Kingdra can fire off the Surf. I think I would survive a Surf here, but I'm still going to put up the shield anyway. I try and fire off the Bulldoze. For some reason, it let them get 2 Dragon Breaths there. I didn't end up waiting the turn. I was just trying to click the move. I pivot into the Seismitoad. The threat of the farm down forces energy, and I should be 1 off of the Bulldoze. Swift will take the KO, but they just don't have the energy that they need. Tinkaton makes the Bulldoze, and that is going to secure the win. All they have left in the back is just a couple HP on Melmetal. In comes Melmetal, it falls to the Fairy Winds, and despite the really bad lead, we're still able to escape with the win. Kingdra into Shadow Ninetales. This is a very good lead. My opponent's going to pivot out, and they're going to save switch into their own Kingdra. I farm up a ton of energy, get the catch and sneak as I send in Tinkaton. Tinkaton more than happy to absorb the Swift, and the Fairy Winds are really going to start to add up. Something I have to be very careful of with this team is never give a big energy head start to a Kanto Ninetales. Because Kanto Ninetales, if it gets up energy, can shred through this team. So after I'm done getting rid of the Kingdra, I'm probably going to pivot back out into my Kingdra just so I can ensure that they never get too much of an energy head start. Because that would be a very big problem because my Seismitoad would get one shot. So I end up pivoting into Kingdra. My opponent reveals they have their own Tinkaton in the back, and that is not what I was hoping to see. Maybe I should have pivoted into the Seismitoad, but Seismitoad would have been down energy and would have just gotten one shot by an energy ball, so I was kind of forced into pivoting into the Kingdra. The good news is Kingdra is able to land 2 Surfs, and my opponent loses count of energy, and I'm able to make a Swift as well. The Swift lands, they lose their entire Tinkaton, back in comes the Ninetales, and I should just be able to debuff my way to victory. Weather Ball lands, Kingdra barely survives, I just can't make the Swift, but now I can bring in the Toad. And I'm pretty sure that even though Toad takes double super effective from Energy Ball, if I double debuff them, then I will actually be able to hang on. So I'm not even going to build up to the Earth Power. I'm just going straight for the Icy Wind. My opponent no shields. They do not want to shield the Icy Wind, but now they're in danger of just getting fully farmed down. At this point, I don't even need to throw my second move. I'm just full committing to the farm. They go for the Weather Ball bait. I pivot into Tinkaton, snipe down with the Fairy Wind, and unfortunately for my opponent, they end up losing with both Protect Shields intact. We move to the next match. Ooh, we've got some day one spice from the opponent as I lead Kingdra into Turtonator. They save switch into Seaking, and this is a Pokemon that just got buffed. Seaking is another recipient of the Drill Run buff, so it's able to have straight 5 pacing with the Drill Run. Icy Wind is still going to be 665. To be honest, I'm not a big believer in Seaking. I think it would be very cool if it was good, but like, look how severely Kingdra manhandles this Pokemon. They end up going for the Icy Wind. I see him P-tie on the Drill Run. The Swift KOs Kingdra. Oh my goodness. I can't believe that I ever doubted Kingdra. I had my worries, but after playing Kingdra extensively on day one, Kingdra is just so fun. Surf lands onto the Turtonator. Turtonator's never going to be able to farm down. And bad news for the Turtonator is I have another water type. I can just bring in the Seismitoad. My opponent sends in their final Pokemon, which is Dugong. And I'm going to go for probably the most disrespectful bait the world has ever seen. We Icy Wind bait the Dugong. We get the shield. We get the catch and sneak of the Icy Wind onto our Tinkaton. The game was definitely going to be a win either way, but by getting the Icy Wind bait and then catching the Icy Wind from their Dugong onto the Tinkaton, we've just put ourselves so far ahead. I'm just going to keep farming, watching for the switch. In comes the Turtonator to be immediately KO'd by the Bulldoze. This is a debuffed Bulldoze, but they're just simply too low. Back in comes the Dugong. I get to launch Gigaton Hammer. This again is debuffed, but Gigaton Hammer is just such a stupid move. In comes Seismitoad. I make it to the Earth Power, and at this point, my opponent's just going to let this go. They know there's no path forward for them in this game. Last game, my opponent lost with 2 shields. This game, I'm actually able to get the win with both Protect Shields intact. We've got a pretty interesting lead matchup. Kingdra into Seismitoad. 2 buffed Pokemon. I have no idea how this matchup goes, but I'm going to start by firing off an Instant Swift. I want to apply some damage before they can debuff me with Icy Wind. They overfarm quite a bit, and I decide to let this go. Even if it's the Earth Power, I can survive it. They do go for the Earth Power. That does a lot of damage. Maybe I could have KO'd with the Swift here, but I was not taking any chances. I'm just going to fire off the Surf. Surf does take the knockout, and down goes Seismitoad. My opponent ends up waiting quite a bit before they send in Corviknight. I'm just able to make a last-second Swift. Swift really not going to do much. My backline is pretty soft to Corviknight. Heck, honestly, my entire team is pretty soft to Corviknight. So what I'm going to do is just bring in Tinkaton. Even though Tinkaton is walled, Corviknight is also walled as well. They do get the attack boost, but an attack boost will not actually increase the amount of sand attack damage unless they get a second boost. They go for a second air cutter. They win charge attack priority. I'm going to fire off Gigaton Hammer and then just look to pivot out and send in Seismitoad. In comes the Toad. Corviknight farm it up massively. They pivot out into a Jumpluff, and Jumpluff only got 2 Fairy Winds. This means that I'm always going to be on pace to win charge attack priority over the Jumpluff. They fire off Energy Ball. I win charge attack priority with the Icy Wind, and I'm just going to completely dominate this Jumpluff matchup with Seismitoad. I just get to debuff them over and over and over. Energy Ball is double super effective, and the Fairy Winds are adding up. But as long as they can never land an Energy Ball, I'm just in such a good spot. Icy Wind is going to be shielded once again. I'm going to be shielding the Energy Ball once again. Now the question is, will my opponent decide to go for a catch out? I say no. I just stay on the field. And suddenly my opponent's at an Energy Ball. Energy Ball is straight 5. I don't know where they got the extra Fairy Wind from. I've watched this back several times. I have no clue where they got the extra Fairy Wind in. But unfortunately, somehow they got the Fairy Wind, and because of that, I end up losing the game. Because I lose the entire Seismitoad, and without the Seismitoad, I just don't have enough energy or HP on the Tinkaton. Tinkaton falls to a barrage of air cutters, and that's one of the only games I lost with this team. That is an absolutely tragic loss. Hopping into the final match, we pick up a pretty nice lead, Kingdra into Stunfisk. Surf is super effective, but it's not going to be able to pick up the one-hit knockout from here. However, I think I can probably go for a one-shield farm down after landing the Surf, and then hopefully exit with a ton of energy. So that's what I'm going to go for. Surf rocks the Stunfisk. The damage from Kingdra Surf is just incredible. They go for the Mud Bomb, and look at this. We get the full farm down. We exit up so much energy. In comes Jumpluff, and this is really not ideal. I would love to try and save this energy and pivot out, but Jump Pluff would absolutely destroy Seismitoad. Seismitoad can do pretty well into Jump Pluff if it's at even energy, but if you're down energy or down a shield, then Seismitoad's gonna struggle. Energy Ball is gonna pick up the one-hit KO. So unfortunately, I'm just forced to concede a massive amount of energy. My opponent pivots, they reveal their final Pokemon is Furret, and I just send in the Seismitoad. Seismitoad, I just need some kind of value from it at this point, so I fire off the Icy Wind, they put up the shield, and I just have to hope that they don't have Trailblaze. Unfortunately, they do. Trailblaze lands, they farm down, but by getting a shield, I've now set up Tinkaton to try and close out this game. The Icy Wind put them at -1, their Trailblaze put them back to 0, and they go for a second Trailblaze, so now they have +1 Sucker Punches. I am not baiting, I feel like it's my lose con. I fire off Gigaton Hammer. Gigaton is going to be shielded. Furret continues to farm, and they do farm up to another Trailblaze. I assume they're going for a Swift, but no, they're just continuing to boost. They farm up more and more. They try for the CMP sack, as in comes Jump Pluff. Acrobatics will do a pretty significant amount of damage. I farm up, and I'm going for Gigaton Hammer. I'm still outside of a range where the Swift will knock out because they've undone all their boosts from earlier. Back in comes the Furret. Furret's gonna make a move, but Swift will not knock out here. I will always be able to hang on. They go for a Trailblaze. Trailblaze does less. That was definitely not gonna KO, and we're gonna escape with the win. Honestly, with a Jump Pluff farm to be down, I thought the game was over, but luckily they were just so weak to Tinkaton that we're still able to get that win. This team produced incredibly good results for me on day 1. I think the trickiest Pokemon for this team to handle were Jump Pluff or Kanto Ninetales up energy. Just because if you're up energy as the Seismitoad, you can handle them pretty nicely, but the moment they get up energy, you're just getting one shot by an energy ball. So you have to be very mindful of how you use your Protect Shields if you're playing against those particular Pokemon. Seismitoad as a whole honestly surprised me by how strong it felt. Being able to spam out Icy Winds every 10 turns really makes life awkward for opponents. Seismitoad can just grind games to a screeching halt with its ability to just apply debuff after debuff. Seismitoad also has a very convincing matchup into Licky Licky, whereas I played that matchup out a few times, even when chipped, even when I'd taken some damage on Seismitoad, and Seismitoad still very much held its own. I do think that when it comes to Mud Boys, it's a very crowded field right now, but I think Seismitoad, at least in the Go Battle League, can do something that no other Mud Boy can do, which is threaten massive super effective damage into the Flyers. But all in all, Seismitoad, it felt like a really strong save switch. Its ability to get up a tiny amount of energy, and then even in its bad matchups, render its opponents completely unable to do any form of meaningful damage, was a really nice addition to the team. I felt that it really well supported the Kingdra Tinkaton core. Kingdra Tinkaton core, by the way, I think is a very strong core. Kingdra, it's going to do well into so many things, but obviously it doesn't want to see fairy type, so you pair it with the fairy type that beats other fairies. I know it's way too early to ever be making judgments on the meta, but all I'm going to say is it was just a very fun day 1. I definitely enjoyed my battles, had quite a bit of fun, got to test out a lot of different new Pokemon, and yeah, this team felt very strong to use. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed watching today's video, please do help support the channel by leaving a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you have not. And an extra special thank you as always to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide to the channel is so appreciated. So thank you guys always very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.